I've been using trail cameras for a long time. So long that the first trail camera that I ever used was a 35mm trail camera. You used 35mm film and you had 24 pictures. And then you had to get the film developed. So it really wasn't a practical scouting tool back when they first came out. It was more of a novelty item. I mean, it was cool and you got to see deer that were never there. We'd never seen anything like that before. It was awesome that you got to see pictures of bucks that you didn't even know were on the property. It was so cool. We really couldn't imagine it being any better than being able to take pictures when you're not there. Then a few years later, the trail cameras became digital, and then they went from, small megapixels to big megapixels to movies. And then from there, you're like, how could this get any better? Along comes the smartphone, and then somebody said, hey, you know what? I'm gonna have this trail camera send me pictures on my smartphone. And that's what we did. And next thing you know, we have cellular trail cameras. This was the first cellular trail camera I ever owned. Kinda. It was just a regular trail camera, but it had a USB output on the bottom, and it allowed you to connect it to this MV1, which was a modem, I guess to say is what they called it. And it allowed you to transfer the images from this camera to this, to the app, to my phone. So I was able to get images, basically from the woods sent to my phone. They were cool items, but at the same time, you had to have 2 items on a tree. And then if you wanted external batteries, which you needed because at the time they just didn't have the technology built into these to where you could save batteries, you needed a solar panel for each one. So by the time I got done with, making this concoction of, I spent like $500. So it just never ended up being that cheap, and I ended up getting 2 systems. The reason I bring up the Moultrie MV1 is because today I'm reviewing the Moultrie Delta, newest, latest, and greatest cellular trail camera from Moultrie. And according to them, it's the most powerful cellular trail camera ever. Now, before we get into the review part of the Moultrie Delta, I do have another video where I did an unboxing and overview of the camera and the app. So if you're really looking to find out how the app works and stuff like that, actually go to that video. It's gonna be right up here. I basically go through every feature in the app and how to get this camera set up and working. I'm not going to do that in this video. This video is more of a review of how the app works, how the camera works, etc. So the Moultrie Delta has a 32 megapixel image sensor, a 0.35 trigger speed, built-in GPS to help if your camera gets stolen, takes HD video and transmits HD video to your phone, an adaptive trigger that automatically adapts to the environment around your camera. So those are just some of the features it has. We'll go into more detail as the video moves on. Now, trail cameras, and especially cellular trail cameras, are scouting tools. But not everybody that uses trail cameras hunts. So I try to touch base on everything this camera can be used for in this review. So first off, let's talk about the camera. Before we get started, I will say I had to reboot this camera one time. It was about 3 days after I did the initial video of my overview. The camera was not working, it was not sending me images probably for like 2 or 3 days. I finally went out there, I rebooted the camera, and it's worked ever since. So it's been working for 2 months straight, other than when I needed to change the batteries. At the time of this review, the camera has taken just under 5,000 photos or videos. Before the camera can even take a picture, it needs to detect something. So let's talk about trigger speed. The trigger speed on this camera seems to be pretty decent. I would say more than 90% of the images taken have an animal that's full-bodied in that image. While they are getting the full body of the deer in the frame, they're not getting it at the beginning when they're walking through. So for instance, if they're moving right to left, more than half of the pictures, the deer is going to be on the left side of the frame. So possibly if the animal would have been moving any faster, we would have just gotten the back side of the animal, not the full body. Now, there are no control settings that you can change for the sensitivity on the trigger, but I will say that it actually does a pretty good job. I have more than a handful of pictures where the deer is out around 30-35 yards, and I rarely get any pictures where there's a bird or something really small. So now that the trigger has detected some animals, let's talk about photo quality. Picture quality from the Moultrie Delta when it comes to the SD card, I would say are mediocre at best. When I transfer the images from the SD card to my computer, they do register as 32 megapixel images, but they just aren't clear, they're distorted, so they just don't look like a 32 megapixel image. I kind of think it has something to do with them using HDR images. I don't know what their process is for creating HDR images, but I know that in a few of the pictures I have where the object was moving across the screen, there seems to be one picture taken and then a second picture taken, and I don't know if it's a shutter thing or whatnot, but there's like almost like a shadow. So when you don't have those pictures perfectly lined up, it really just blurs the image. Basically, an HDR photo is when they take two pictures at once, one geared towards low light and one geared towards really bright situations. And then they combine those pictures and it balances the picture out so you can see in the shadows, and then you can also see the highlights. So for instance, if somebody was sitting under a tree, you'd be able to see the detail of that person sitting under the tree, but at the same time, you'd be able to see the clouds and the blue sky. But so far, I just don't feel like it's perfected with this camera. It just doesn't take very good quality pictures, whether I have it sitting in the woods or I have it sitting on the edge of a field. Having a big 32 megapixel image, you'd want to be able to zoom into those images and see a lot of detail in the background of deer off in the distance. But unfortunately, this camera just doesn't have the detail you'd expect from a 32 megapixel image. If the animal's up close, you can get some detail in the face and so on, but you really don't need that. You need the image quality to be good out at a distance. The Moultrie Delta's night images are pretty much the same. You really can't get much detail over 10 yards, and a lot of times, if it's more than 10 yards away, you can't even tell if it's a buck or a doe. Luckily, I did find that if you put it in your phone, or you put it in Photoshop or anything like that, you can adjust the settings in the picture and then you can get more detail out of the images. With an iPhone, you can even do that with the videos. Now that really has nothing to do with this camera, but it is something that might interest you if you are interested in purchasing this camera. Videos from the SD card seem to be pretty distorted, especially if they're moving at a higher speed. I drove by with my Razor a couple times and it was kind of weird because it was almost like there was like a shadow or a ghost following my Razor across the screen. But I will say that when you're looking at the videos on your phone, they look pretty good. Something about the smaller screens and more pixels. You look at the image on your phone and you just don't see all those blemishes that you see when you're looking at it on a bigger screen like a laptop. As far as the night videos go, it's pretty much the same as the pictures. There's just not enough power in those infrareds to really light up the sky so that you can see deer off in the distance. It's pretty much a 10-yard max. I mean, honestly, I would say it's about a 7-yard max. Luckily, I've had this camera mounted underneath an apple tree, so most of the deer are coming right in real close to eat those apples. But now that apple tree is dried up, most of the videos I've been getting, the deer are just a little bit too far off in the distance to where I can see them in those infrareds. One thing I've noticed while doing all the reviews for these trail cameras is most of the videos being recorded on the other trail cameras record a 15-second video from about 10 megabytes to 15 megabytes. Moultrie Delta records a video that's 15 seconds long in 1080, and the video is only 1 to 2 megabytes. So a big problem with the video and picture quality on the Moultrie Delta probably has something to do with its compression. For a reference to how small that video size is, YouTube limits the size of your thumbnail to 2 megabytes. So the thumbnail used for the videos, the only thing that they use just to click the video, it doesn't have any motion or any kind of sound or anything like that, is 2 megabytes. This entire 15-second video is smaller than the YouTube thumbnail. So photos, videos, it all takes data. So let's talk about the plan. With the Moultrie Delta, you have two options for service, which is Verizon or AT&T. It's good to know what service is gonna work where you plan on putting this camera. The other thing I wanna make sure everybody knows is you do not need to have Verizon or AT&T for your regular everyday phone. They don't connect this to your phone bill. You strictly pay for your service through the app, and then they handle the rest. So you can have 3 AT&T cameras and 2 Verizon cameras, and you can use T-Mobile as your phone service. It doesn't matter because everything gets paid through the app. Now, if you're only gonna use one camera and you wanna pay on a monthly plan, the plan is $4.99 a month to $16.99 a month with different features in between. If you wanna pay for a year service, they average out at around $2.99 to $12.99 per month. If you decide to go with an unlimited plan, you get unlimited photo transfers as well as 50 video downloads. Now, if you have the Pro Series plan, your first camera costs you $34.99 a month, and then each additional camera is $7.99, but you will need at least 4 cameras for this to actually pay off. Now, I will say that the Moultrie Delta does not work unless you are paying for a plan. So Even if you have this sitting out in the woods, once your plan runs out, the camera will not work. It will not take any more pictures. You have to be paying at least $2.99 a month for this camera to work. So let's talk about the app. The Moultrie mobile app is one of the best apps that you can actually get. Mostly because it's one of the oldest apps that's out there. And they haven't done a whole lot since I had my old MV1s to now, other than just add new functions to it. But as far as the functionality of the app goes, as far as the features go, the app is really good. You're able to download HD pictures, you're able to download HD videos. Once all those images are in your phone, you can filter through them looking for different species. You can separate the bucks from the does. And then as well, you can manually make filters. Plus you can add custom tags where, say, you have a specific buck you want to follow, and every time that buck comes in, you want to put it into its own little tag. You can do so manually and just take those pictures, select them, and then put them with that custom tag that you created. As well, you can filter the pictures by time of day, moon phase, and barometric pressure. And then if you want even more detail, you can go in and you can see when the pictures were taken of bucks, does, or even turkeys. When you want to check the Moultrie Delta status, you can easily do so in the Devices tab. If you had multiple cameras running, you could see each one's individual information. Here I can check how much space is left on my SD card, how much battery is left on the camera, how many video downloads you have for each camera, when the last communication was with the camera. As well, this is where you'd be changing the settings in the camera. So if you want to change it so that the pictures are being sent instantly or once per day or twice per day, you can do that all within this Devices page. The one thing I would like to see here is I would like to see if my camera is connected to a 12 volt. I currently have a 12 volt attached to the camera, but it doesn't read that there is a 12 volt. Some days I think that it's working, other days I don't. And I think it's working, but I'm not real sure. And the only reason I think it's working is because usually in the mornings the battery percentage seems to be lower, and by the end of the day it's fully charged. But I don't really know because it doesn't indicate whether I'm using a 12 volt or my alkalines. Now my battery solar panel box is an aftermarket box. Like I said, I don't even know if it's working because it doesn't detect it, but maybe the one made by Moultrie would actually register and I'd be able to tell if it was connected. This leads me to talk about the batteries. How long does the camera hold power? But before we can even talk about the longevity of the batteries when it's being used, let's just talk about putting the batteries in. I don't like the way that the camera's set up. It's kind of complicated. When you have it laying flat, it's fine. It's really easy to get the batteries in there. But when you have it set up on a tree, you have to put two batteries in at once. Otherwise, the battery will just keep falling out. The deer season comes along and I have to deal with changing the batteries. I don't want to have to be out there for a long time fiddling with batteries, especially if it's cold and I'm wearing gloves, etc. As far as battery usage goes, to be honest, I mean, the Moultrie Delta just hasn't done well, at least for the settings that I have set in the camera. But taking pictures and videos with 8 transmissions a day, I've had to change the batteries 7 times within the 5,000 pictures that it's taken. And for some reason, this is even with the 12 volt battery pack that I have connected to the camera. So the good side of the Moultrie Delta, it does what it's supposed to do. It takes pictures, takes videos, and it transmits them to the app. I have this set up for 8 transmissions a day. Basically every 3 hours it is sending me photos or videos unless something hasn't been taken, and it does it almost every day right on time. The app is really good. It's really nice that you're able to download HD images as well as HD videos. The plan is good, it's not too expensive, and for the most part it has been pretty reliable. I haven't had to worry about the camera not working or rebooting the camera other than when I need to change the batteries. Unfortunately, there's a bad side to the camera too, and it starts with image quality. You'd expect for 32 megapixel, you're gonna get these amazing pictures, and they're just not. The daytime images aren't very clear, and then the nighttime images aren't very lit up. The infrareds just don't seem to give it that boost that it needs to see the animals out in front of the camera. And then the HD videos, you know, the compression's so high that it just makes them look bad. And then the batteries. The batteries just aren't very good. But at the same time, I am running video for everything. So it's hard to judge when a lot of comparisons I do, the cameras aren't running video. As far as right now, this is one of the worst cameras I have when it comes to battery life. But to be honest, if they can improve on all these things with some firmware updates and just create better pictures and, you know, get rid of all the compression on the video, this camera could be really powerful. It could really be a very good camera, especially for $99. I mean, you got 32 megapixel images, You have HDR images, which if they could just improve on that, it would probably clear up a lot of the problems that they're having with the image quality. And as of right now, it's hard to recommend this camera, but at the same time, for a $99 price point, it's hard to not recommend this camera. And that's the big problem I have with their marketing for this camera. They call it the most powerful cellular trail camera ever. And it's not there yet. It's not there at all. I mean, maybe the most powerful cellular trail camera at $99, probably. But at the same time, you know, the images you're getting off your SD card just aren't very good. Now, I am one person, I only have one camera. I don't have multiple Moultrie Deltas, so it could just be my camera. If any of you guys are using this camera and you're not having the same issues as I am, you know, please leave a comment down below and say that, you know, my pictures are better, my videos are better, I can see really far in the dark, you know, whatever. Just let me know, or let the viewers know. I know at the time of my overview video that there was an issue with the cameras transitioning from day to night or night to day, and all the pictures at that time were being overexposed. You didn't get anything, it was just a big white image. Since then, that problem has been fixed, and they may be able to fix these other problems that I'm talking about over time. But as of right now, I just don't know if I can recommend this camera. And that's the other thing, that's another selling point for the camera, is when they do firmware updates, they literally just do the firmware update and send it to the camera, and you don't have to worry about putting an SD card in or anything like that. Before anybody says I have a problem with Moultrie, I have no issues with Moultrie whatsoever. I actually had really high hopes for this camera, seeing as how I started using cellular trail cameras with Moultrie. Like I said, it's hard for me to recommend this camera. At the same time, it's hard for me not to recommend this camera because of the price. I see this camera on sale all the time for around 79 bucks. That's a hard to beat price for a cellular trail camera. The Moultrie Delta has a lot of great features. They just need to be improved on, but the camera works well, especially for 99 bucks. If you guys are still interested in this camera and I didn't scare you away with my review, I do have an affiliate link down below. So final thoughts, the camera's really cool. It has a lot of great features. It just needs to be improved upon. But if you are using it strictly for a scouting purpose camera, it works well. I mean, it works good enough to where you can count on it to send you pictures on a daily basis. So I have a couple more videos coming up. I got a couple more comparisons, a couple more reviews. I got quite a few more reviews actually. Then the season's gonna start. So I probably won't be doing a whole lot of reviews, but I will be hunting a lot. Got new clothes and everything. Thanks for watching. Comment down below. Hit that like button. Subscribe. I gotta go.